Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the regular agenda as printed. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The consent agenda is before the council, and all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to either add or remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as printed. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. The minutes of the regular city council meeting held August twelfth, 2024, before the city council. Again, is there anyone in the audience or any member of the city council that wishes to make any changes to the minutes as they're printed? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting held August twelfth.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the regular minutes. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Bradley Peterson is here this evening from Flaherty and Hood, and Bradley's gonna present the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Annual Update.
Thank you, Mayor Brank and members of the council. Again, my name is Bradley Peterson with Flaherty and Hood here today on behalf of the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. As you know, we try to get out and visit as many of our cities as we can after the legislative session and before the next one, and give you a chance to hear a little bit about the work that we did during the last session, a little bit about what we think might be upcoming, and give you an opportunity to ask any questions or give us any thoughts that you might have. So please, as I'm going along here, don't hesitate to interrupt, interject, ask questions, whatever you need is just great. So just a brief reminder here, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities represents about 110 cities outside of the 7-county metro. We focus primarily on the issues of local government aid and property taxes, economic development, transportation, annexation and land use, environmental regulatory issues, and then some labor and employment issues. Under economic development, that ends up being a catch-all for a whole bunch of things that includes very traditional economic development type activities, but also that's the bucket under which we talk about housing and childcare and things like that. So a big agenda for the coalition in general. So the last legislative session, 2023 was a big one, right? They had the state budget, they had a $17 billion surplus. The trifecta was go, go, go. They passed a lot of policy. And so I think that going into 2024, the expectation was we're just gonna kind of hopefully pump the brakes a little bit, just do what's necessary, pass a bonding bill, and get out of Dodge. Very short list of priorities. So one thing to talk a little bit about is there was a little bit of a surplus going into the session of about $3.7 billion. Again, very different from the $17 billion surplus that the state had before, and so not a lot of expectation around spending. So in terms of the coalition and our legislative agenda, we had three things basically. $120 million to shore up the bonding or the EMS system in the state, pass a bonding bill, and pump the brakes on any new big policy. They threw a lot at cities during the 23 session, and so we really thought the legislature should simply focus on making sure all of that was going to work the way that it was intended, and otherwise let cities have an opportunity to really kind of adjust to those changes and prepare for them, things like the paid family medical leave, the earned safe and sick time, et cetera. And so that was our agenda, very limited, going, I think, again, with the sort of limited agenda of what we assumed the legislature would be. So the first thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is EMS. And I know that for you guys, you are covered by Essentia, but a lot of local governments in Greater Minnesota do own and operate their own EMS system. And so we were hearing from our members that they were in financial crisis. And if you look at the discussion from the state over the last 30 years, you will see probably 4 or 5 different reports starting in the year 2000 that say some version of there's a crisis in rural ambulance services. And so we were hearing a lot from our members that they were essentially at a breaking point. And it basically is because of the fact that reimbursement for Medicare and Medicaid and public and private insurance just was not keeping up with the costs to run an operation. About 55% of the license holders for EMS licenses are local governments, and that's another reason why we jumped to get involved. About 34, 35 CGMC members directly own or operate their own system. And so I'll kind of skip ahead here, don't need to spend a lot of time on the back and forth, but we did put a bill into the legislature for $120 million to distribute the aid to cities and any providers that had suffered a shortfall in the year of 2022, which was the most recent for which there was information available. The final outcome on that, after lots of back and forth at the legislature and lots of time working on distribution formulas and things like that, was $24 million that went out to providers, again, primarily in rural Minnesota, and then $6 million that went into some pilot programs, especially in St. Louis, Otter Tail, and Grant counties. So, for instance, the Essentia operation here in Detroit Lakes is eligible for $214,000 for whatever they need related to EMS, whether it's equipment, just operations, staffing, anything that falls under sort of the EMS bucket. Essentia can use that apply for and use that $214,000 for here in Detroit Lakes. And so not exactly what we were looking for in terms of the very big ask, but considering that we started at zero and there was not a lot of appetite for additional spending this year, getting $24 million for rural EMS, I think is a win. So there will be ongoing discussions, I think, here over the next several months about what CGMC's role in this discussion is and what we might be putting forward next. So the next thing is bonding. So a little bit of background just on the bonding bill. It's a traditional year for a bonding bill. You know, they did a big one last year, but they had been off by a couple of years. And so, as you know, there are always needs for public investment. CGMC really focuses on the programs that are funded by the Public Facilities Authority, so water and wastewater and things like that. The BDPI program, the Business Development Public Infrastructure Grant Program, which helps with business attraction and retention and building out the public infrastructure related to that. Lead service line replacement was another thing that we focused on this year, and then a couple of other programs. The governor came out with his bonding bill, as he is supposed to, just shy of $900 million in general obligation bonds and some other funding. So very much smaller than what they did last year. So that was the governor's proposal. Now, as I noted, there's a whole bunch of things that we were working on related to that, but none of that happened for any number of reasons. And I think the fact that there was not a bonding bill was one of the great disappointments for our cities. And there's a lot of reasons, some of them more dramatic and weird than others, why there wasn't a bonding bill. I think one of the things that I would acknowledge is that the arrest of Senator Mitchell for the breaking and entering here in Detroit Lakes really did kind of throw the legislature into a spin for a couple of weeks. They kind of just didn't know what to do, how to proceed forward, because you've got a 34-33 DFL majority. If she's not voting with the Democrats, you have 33-33 deadlock, and nothing gets done. So, of course, the Republicans wanted her aside. The Democrats were arguing for the legal process to continue, which it is continuing. And so that really became just an unfortunate kind of interpersonal dynamic amongst the parties. And I can't think, you can't underestimate, frankly, the extent to which that I think did get in the way of progress towards getting things done in the end of session, especially a bonding bill where you need Republican votes because you need a supermajority to pass that. You need 3/5. So another thing is just quirks of the legislative calendar. The month of April, they took 3 breaks, one for Passover, one for Easter, and one for the Muslim holiday of Eid. And so the legislature did not work a full week in April. And that kind of slowed things down. And then at the very end, you had a number of things in the last couple of days that really just sort of got in the way and took the oxygen out of the room for passage of any kind of bonding bill. That would be the discussion of an equal rights amendment to Minnesota's Constitution, trying to sort out the ongoing business from last year of the Uber and Lyft bill and whether or not those services would leave Minnesota, primarily the metro area. Gun control, all of those things took up a lot of time and energy in the last couple of days of the session and really detracted from what we think should have been one of their main jobs this session, and that's passing a bonding bill. I want to talk a little bit about housing and zoning, and this fits into the pumping the brakes on other policy. One of the things that we saw this legislative session was a lot of policy aimed at zoning, development, that sort of thing, that would have basically taken a lot of cities' authority over those issues away and would have required you to allow certain things, whether you wanted to or not, or whether they made sense in the context of your city or not. And so the primary crux of it was allowing, in some cases, up to 8 plexes on what had been formerly single-family lots. There were a number of different iterations and combinations of those ideas, but basically upzoning to require that that cities in the state allow those by right. And so you would not have had any say where, when, under what circumstances. I think it obscured a lot of the work that cities had already been doing to get to density and that sort of thing, all with laudable goals to increase housing and to increase housing affordability, but in a very one-size and, from our perspective, fairly metro-oriented perspective. And so we, along with the League of Cities and the other municipal organizations, argued strenuously at the legislature against these bills. Ultimately, they did not happen. But they will be coming back. There will be discussion continuing about these types of ideas here in the next legislative session. And so we'll be working with the housing chairs in the House and the Senate and other legislators to see if we can shape something that makes sense and gives flexibility to communities across the state in terms of, you know, what your circumstances will allow, but also will hopefully result in more housing. A couple of other things that I want to talk about just briefly, and really I'll just focus maybe on the first one unless you have questions or want to discuss the others. There is, as you know, a moratorium on coming to the legislature for any kind of local option sales tax. That was put into law in the 2023 tax bill. It continues until, the moratorium continues until after this legislative session coming up, so middle of 2025. In the meantime, the Department of Revenue was tasked with convening a working group to talk about how do we regularize and how do we make sense of the local option sales tax process. Legislators of both parties are unhappy with the process for different reasons. They think it's, in some cases, too political, that it treats communities unfairly, that it creates inequities in our tax system. Sales taxes are regressive. There's a whole basket of reasons why legislators don't like local option sales taxes. Of course, cities look to them to fund things that they can't fund otherwise, public infrastructure, community amenities, things that add to the quality of life and such. So we participated in those discussions. The way that the task force ended up moving was towards allowing cities to just, of their own, without needing to go to the legislature, for a very prescribed list of projects, pass an ordinance and put it on the ballot yourselves without having to go to the legislature. And then things outside that list, you could still go to the legislature and beg and plead and do all the stuff that cities do when you go to the legislature to get a local option sales tax. That was positive from our perspective. There were still lots of problems, and the House and the Senate versions of the legislation, even though they had that kind of as their core, were otherwise very different. And so nothing got done. And so the discussion continues. And so we'll be continuing to engage with the tax chairs, with the Department of Revenue, with the governor's office, with other stakeholders, so that when we get to session, we can have some sort of arrangement that allows cities to go forward with projects that they need to satisfy some of the legislators' concerns, and avoids the moratorium being reinstated, because that's been the, I think, intent of the tax chairs, that if they can't come to any kind of resolution on that issue, they'll just continue the moratorium. They're not going to let it expire. And so it's very much a issue to continue to be engaged on. Looking ahead, we've got an election coming up. As I'm sure everyone is aware, every member of the Minnesota House, all 134 members, are up for election to determine the control of the House of Representatives. The Senate is not up, although there is one seat that is up on a special election, and that is a seat in the West Metro that's being vacated by Senator Morrison, who's running for U.S. Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. And so there is one seat that will determine control of the Senate up for election. During the election season, we engage with candidates. We actually just finalized and are going to be sending out this week a packet of information for all candidates, legislative candidates on the ballot, that goes through our issues. So it talks about local government aid and why that's important, and why are the PFA programs and a bonding bill important, and how is the child care problem different in greater Minnesota than it is in the metro, and what are the programs that are most important for building housing in greater Minnesota through the MHFA, things of that nature. We've done this every 2 years. It's generally very well received, and so you'll be seeing that come out here very shortly as well. And then we've got the election, of course, and then the legislature starts January 14th, which, because of a law change, is a little bit later this year than it would be otherwise. Otherwise, coming up, we've got our fall conference in Alexandria in the middle of November after the election. So we'll go through the election results. We'll talk about what they mean for greater Minnesota and our legislative agenda, and kind of roll up our sleeves and put some final touches on what we're going to do next year. And then we've got our summer conference, or our Legislative Action Day, which is where we bring everybody down to St. Paul, have you lobby the legislators, get briefed on the issues, have a nice dinner at Mancini's, enjoy each other's company. And then our summer conference will be in Bemidji this year in July. So lots going on, lots coming up, lots of activity. But I'm going to stop talking and see if you have any questions or comments or issues of concern that I can address.
Questions for Bradley from the council?
No, but I would like to say that we're going to have this meeting in November in Alexandria, and Bradley puts on a great program, updating us on everything and giving us help on things that we need to have help on, and he's a wealth of information. We've been a member for many, many years, and we're very pleased of the work that they do for us, lobbying for us in St. Paul. And so if any of you haven't been to a November meeting, see Carrie, because she's taken names down for reservations, and it's very worthwhile to go down there and really get caught up with fellow cities from other areas and just see what their problems are compared to ours, and see what we can do as a group to turn some of that stuff around. But under Brad's leadership, we come out with a good program.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I also want to note that we're very fortunate to have Kelsey on our board. He's been on our board for several years, and he's, especially on some of these land use type questions, kind of become one of our go-to guys. And so we're very lucky to have the kind of partnership that we do with our cities.
Where can we sign up to get updates and alerts from CGMC?
What's that?
Where can we sign up to get updates and alerts from CGMC?
You should be getting those. And so I will be checking in, because you should be getting a weekly newsletter.
Yep.
And then action alerts as we send them out. So I'll, excuse me, I'll make sure that you're getting those.
It goes to the other category in your emails. I don't know if you
I'll
looked
check
there.
that.
Yeah, that oftentimes happens too. Because it's a wealth of information. I don't want you to miss it.
Further questions or comments? Bradley, it's always a pleasure. We appreciate you coming up, and we will see you soon.
Thank you so much. Good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
So I think we'll skip over the public hearing for now. There's some folks here for item 5B, Matt, so if we could jump to the Community Development Committee agenda, 5B, please.
Yes, Your Honor. 5B, consideration to a resolution approving a non-conforming use expansion permit to allow a second-story addition of a 14-foot by 9-inch by 20-foot 8-inch cabin at 2156 Long Lake Road. This was discussed at Planning Commission with unanimous approval. This was discussed last night at CDC. And just to clarify, this is a expansion permit, but they are tearing down and starting over, adding a second floor to what they currently have. They're staying in the same footprint, that's why it's under the expansion permit. We discussed this at CDC last night, it was unanimous approval, so I move this forward.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution approving a non-conforming use expansion permit at 2156 Long Lake Road. Is there a discussion by the council? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Did you folks have any questions? Okay, okay. Is there anyone else in the audience that has an item they'd like adjusted on the agenda? I would certainly like to accommodate if need be. If not, we'll go back, and at this time, I'll adjourn the regular meeting and call to order a public hearing to receive public comments on the proposed modification of the boundaries of redevelopment project area number 43. And before we get into that, I would maybe call on Larry Remen to tee that up for us.
Okay, this is a public hearing to give consideration to expanding redevelopment project number 43. This is a TIF district, and it would allow us to utilize some additional TIF monies if they're available in this project area. And the project area is being enlarged to include more of Highway 10, 290th Street, and East Shore Drive intersection, so that we can, if there is a project there in the future, we can utilize any excess TIF monies that we have available.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that has any questions or wishes to make any comments regarding the redevelopment project area 43? Hearing none, that public hearing is closed, and I would entertain a motion. Dan, have you got that on your agenda?
I think I'll take that,
Matt,
Mayor.
go ahead.
Item B1 is consideration of resolution approving the modification of redevelopment project number 43 in the city of DL. The approval of the modification of the redevelopment plan for the redevelopment project, the modification of tax increment financing District 43-1 to be located within the redevelopment project, and the approval of modification of the tax increment finance plan, otherwise known as TIF. Therefore, all pursuant to and in accordance with Minnesota City State Statutes, sections 469-124 through 469-133, and sections 469-174 through 469.1794 inclusive as amended. And I so move that.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the resolution that I won't read back.
Said, what he
Everybody
said?
understand?
Yeah, what he said.
Exactly. Is there a discussion by the council?
I'd just like to say that this is for the new Kubota dealership area, if you're wondering where this is at. And it's also gonna take care of getting rid of the old swinging door building. So it's gonna clean up that whole area. This TIF is very much needed.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And with that, we'll jump back over to the Community Development Committee. Chairman Bulkey.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item 5A is just a discussion, so there will be no action tonight, but we discussed in length. We had a pretty good policy debate. It was awfully spicy. Some discussion regarding annexation and zoning. We're going to bring this back next month to CDC to bring more recommendations for it next meeting. So if you have any questions about that, please talk to Kelsey or Larry on that subject. 5B is taken care of. Moving down to 5C. Consideration of the first reading of ordinance number 527, amending the zoning ordinance, changing the maximum height of an R4 limited multifamily district. With this was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission as well as CDC last night. And what this does is just basically make everything equal from the shoreland ordinance to the R4 to a building height of 39 feet. We discussed at CDC and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to give first reading to ordinance 527, amending the zoning ordinance, changing the maximum height in the R4 residential district. Discussion?
I would,
Go ahead.
I would just note that several members of the planning commission thought this was already done. We've issued several variances because of that mismatch, and so it brings it in alignment, and we won't have to issue as many variances with this change.
Okay, was there another question? Okay. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, the motion carries, and first reading is given to ordinance number 527.
That's all, Your Honor.
We'll move to the Public Works Committee, Chairman Zeman.
Okay, for Public Works, item A, this is for discussion only, but we're having some neighbors concerned about a no-wake zone, and we have all winter to work on this, but we've had a lot of jet skis and so forth, and it's becoming a little bit of a problem, so we're gonna work on that a little bit more and have staff look into it a little bit deeper. Going on to item B, consideration for a request for a Lakes Area Sailing School. Kelsey, do you want to give us a little update on that?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, there is a sailing school that's looking to start in the old laundromat building on Westlake Drive. They're looking to start next summer. Really what they're asking for is really no changes to the parking, no changes to the crosswalk, no changes to the swimming area. Let's see here, if you get to page 106 in your packet, there's basically an area between the existing floating dock, the fishing pier, and some private docks, about a 60-foot gap in between there. And really what they're asking for is during the sailing school to put up some temporary signs through there to basically limit access with boat traffic coming into that immediate area. There probably isn't much of a conflict. The sailing school really goes from morning into kind of mid-afternoon. So really the request for the city council to consider is just permission for them to use that part of the beach and be able to put up some temporary signage.
Okay, and thanks, Kelsey. This program is being run by the DLCC, and it's basically gonna run for 5 to 6 weeks and for 5 days each week. And it's something new for kids. We've got 412 lakes for people to sail on, so this gives a school on it. It's, like I said, it's gonna be run by the DLCC, and the committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the request of the Lakes Area Sailing School. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, the next item is item C, consideration for approving a contract with Cars Tree Service for 2024 and 25 for diseased trees. I'm gonna call on Sean to give us a little update on that.
Mayor and council, yes, if you remember right in the spring, we voted on, or you approved Clear Cut to be our city contractor for removal of diseased and dead trees. We did get a letter from them dated September 4th that they could not fulfill the contract. So I did talk to Cars Tree Service. They were the second bidder, second lowest bid, and they said they could still do it for their contracted price. So we sent them the contract to see if, and they signed it and got it back to us, and that's what's in your packet for approval this evening.
Okay, the committee reviewed this, and I so move that we go ahead and approve this contract for Cars Tree Service.
Second.
2024 and 25.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a contract with Cars Tree Service for the 2024-25 disease tree removal. Discussion by the council. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Okay, the next item is item D, consideration to resolution setting an assessment hearing for the Highway 10 East for water and sewer extension projects on for October 8th, 2024 meeting at 5 o'clock. And I'm gonna call on John to give us a little update on that.
Mayor and Council, we have with the Highway 10 sewer and water extension out to the Quality Equipment dealership, there's really two parties that would sort of come into play in terms of special assessments. One is Quality Equipment itself. I suspect that will actually be taken care of through a development agreement that we already have in place with the developer on that. And that's the vast majority of it. However, there's one other property that is benefiting from the sewer and the water improvements out there. And so really the point of the hearing is to notify them of the special assessment for sewer and water service.
Okay, the committee reviewed this and we move to approve the resolution for setting the public hearing for our next month's meeting on October 8th, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution setting an assessment hearing for the Highway 10 East Water and Sewer Extension Project for next month's regular council meeting. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, our last item is item E, consideration for the acceptance of our city engineer, John Pratt, for his monthly report. And John, I'll call on you again.
All right, Mayor and Council, still quite a bit of work happening around town, starting to wrap up some projects, but first of all, I apologize. The report that was in your packet was mistakenly the August report, so it was the incorrect report. But first couple of projects, the 2024 street rehab and the Willow Springs project, those were contracted together. Effectively, that work is complete. We have just a couple of small completion correction items that need to be taken care of, and then that project is done. West Downtown Street and Utility reconstruction, fair amount of work completed on that over the last month. Frazee Street, sewer and water, all the underground infrastructure is done. Curb and gutter, sidewalks, those are complete. And Haug is right now working on getting the Class 5 down and things ready for paving, which is scheduled for Thursday of this week. So I'm hoping Frazee Street should be reopened sometime next week or thereabouts. Front Street, they've also completed the underground utilities on that portion of the project, and they're working on subgrade prep and getting ready for curb and gutter to come in on that sometime next week. And probably within the next week or two, we should see work start on Lake Street, one block of Lake and then a small alley. And that'll be the last piece of that project. So moving along nicely. Not a lot of movement on the water tower project, unfortunately. We're still in sort of a holding pattern, waiting for that phase 1 archaeological study to get underway and get completed so that we can commence construction on that. So nothing to report there. Trunk Highway 10 East Sewer and Water Extension. That project, they're probably about 3/4 of the way done. I think by the end of the week here, they're gonna have the bulk of that underground infrastructure installed and just be working on some restoration items. 290th Avenue should be reopened by Friday afternoon. So by sometime early to mid next week, I think all of that work will be complete as well. One project that hasn't been on here as of lately is the Heartland State Trail Trailhead. If you recall, we got a $400,000 carbon reduction program grant through MnDOT for this project. And this trailhead's located between Casey's and Country Inn and Suites on Highway 10 East on that vacant parcel of property that the city owns. The proposed project would include a small parking lot area and some park-like amenities like a shelter, some benches, a water fountain, trash cans, bike fix-it station and things of that nature, as well as some public EV charging stations in the parking lot and the capability to charge e-bikes as well at the shelter. So that project is designed, submitted to MnDOT for approval. We got word that they have approved the plans, so we're just waiting for some final paperwork from MnDOT. And then we will be able to go out for bids on that project probably in October. I expect most of the work will be completed sometime next year. Forest Street and Utility Reconstruction. Last month, you authorized the preparation of that report. We're partway through that, and I expect I'll bring the report back to the council for approval in October. Again, that'll be a 2025 construction. Westlake Drive Phase 3, it felt like it was time to put that on the radar here. Staff has been working alongside Becker County. This is a cooperative project with the county on just really trying to get the scope of the project sort of pulled together, get through some of the preliminary layout and concept development along with some of the environmental work. It's another project we'll have to do an archaeological phase 1 assessment on. So getting some of that stuff moving and out of the blocks, and then over the next year, be a fair amount of work in terms of refining what exactly is going to be included with that improvement project. Right now, we've got that project scheduled for 2026. So more to come on that. And the last one to throw on here, we've been working on this for a bit here, but we're sort of getting close to finishing up some of the design. The city received a grant from the state, legacy grant for improvements up at DMRA. There's a variety of improvements, including parking lot improvements to the mountain biking trailhead area, a tree house, some downhill mountain biking trails, an accessible trail, Nordic ski loop trail with lighting and snowmaking. So a number of those improvements we've got pretty close to final design on. And again, I would expect we'll probably go out for bids on that sometime next month with a bulk of the work occurring in 2025. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you, John. And the committee moves that we go ahead and accept this project status report, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the city engineer's monthly project status report. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Anything else, Ron?
That'll be all, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll move to the Finance Committee, Chairman Josephson.
Item 7A is consideration to approving the DLCCC budget and rates for 2025. I'll take a swing at this, and then if I mess it up, I'll hand it over to Kelsey. But basically, we had a report from Peter Jacobson at the Finance Committee meeting. Sounds like they had a decent last year with making money of $170,000, $180,000. And they provided a copy of their capital needs list and capital budget that they're putting forward. It's in your packet. They also have a realistically conservative budget in there, is what Peter referred to it as, and also their rate sheet for next year, which overall it looked like about a 5% increase. They took some tiers away from their pricing structure, but also increased rates overall. So you'll see that in their rate sheet. Finance Committee reviewed this, recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the DLCCC budget and rates for 2025. Discussion by the council. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item B is consideration to approving the request from the Marshmallow Foundation. This I will hand off to Heidi and/or Kelsey, whoever wants to jump in first. And
Sure. Mayor and council, in your packet is a letter from the Marshmallow Animal Shelter requesting a capital contribution for the purchase and acquisition of their current facility that they're in, that they were leasing before. So it's the acquisition of that property and then also basically doing some repairs and upgrades to the building. We talked about this quite a bit during our budget meetings. Their request was for $75,000. During the budget meetings, we had a recommendation of doing a total of $50,000. It'd be $10,000 per year spread out over 5 years. The council still needs to take action on that request, so I believe that's going to be the recommendation of the Finance Committee.
all right, so the item is consideration to approving the request of $10,000 a year for a total of $50,000 for the Marshmallow Animal Shelter. Finance Committee reviewed this and recommends approval, and I so move.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the request from the Marshmallow Foundation. Discussion on the item?
I just want to say that a group of council people went out to the Marshmallow here after one of our budget meetings to look the property over. And they've got a very nice building. It's well kept. It's very clean. I expected to smell a lot of dog and cats, but it didn't have any smells like that at all. But what I did see is an abundance of, I think they had 85 kitty cats that day. and they had a number of dogs. So if anybody's looking for an animal, go out and talk to them because they certainly have some dandies there. And I just about got one. Even Dan even volunteered to pay the fee, but I holding off on it. But they do have a good assortment out there. So if you're thinking about getting an animal, give them the first shot, and they do a good service out there. And I'm glad that we're going to give them money.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item C is about the tax levy and designating October 10th or December 10th as the truth of taxation hearing. I'm going to hand this over before get too deep into this. I'll hand this over to Heidi to explain what our August budget meetings came to the conclusion of.
Thank you. Mayor and council, so this evening before you is the consideration to establish the preliminary budget and levy for the 2025 budget and levy collectible in 2025. This is something that the council has to do before the end of September. I have to then turn over and give that information to the county, and then the county then notifies the state as well. The county will then prepare preliminary tax statements that are sent out, mailed out to every property owner in the city sometime around mid-November. And then in December, we will hold our final meeting regarding the budget and levy, which then includes a public hearing and a receiving public comment on the proposed budget and levy. So before you this evening is sort of the summary or the culmination of all of those budget meetings that we held in the early morning hours in August. Thank you to everybody that participated. There were a lot of people that showed up, so I was super jazzed about that. Kind of the main items I wanted to talk about were the items that were affecting the budget and levy this time around. So right now, our preliminary levy increase is at 7.97%. This again can be lowered, but it cannot be increased. So where we set our preliminary levy at, it cannot go any higher than that. Our property valuation increases are estimating to be just above 6% for 2025. So what that means is because our levy is increasing slightly more than our valuations for this preliminary budget and levy, that means our tax rate will go slightly up. So we're estimating our tax rate will go from our 24 rate of 39.004% to an estimated 25 rate of 39.68%. No one spends percents, we spend dollars. So what does that mean to the average homeowner? So this equates to about a 1.73% increase in the city portion only of the property owner's tax bill for 25. So for example, if you have a $300,000 residential homestead property, your city portion of your taxes next year would increase $19.59 for the year. That is if your valuation stayed the same from 24 to 25. So that's kind of a little overview of kind of the end. Now the sort of how the hot dog is made, the major items that went into that, and what's included in that preliminary budget and levy. We've got capital funding again for that Marshmallow Animal Shelter at a rate of an additional $10,000 per year for the next 5 years so that they can purchase the building and then keep their operations in their current location. We've got an additional $30,000 that was allocated toward the street department's capital equipment. As anyone knows, recent years, the costs of everything has gone up quite substantially, and even more so with some of the larger streets department equipment. And so we felt it necessary to add some additional funding in there so that we can continue to fund our equipment rotation and replacement schedule so we don't end up paying more for more repair costs for older equipment in the end. We have included in the budget some funding for the food pantry. So the food pantry came forward and asked for the city to fund half of their operating costs for the 2025 calendar year, which came to $15,706. The budget committee felt that this was a worthwhile endeavor to fund, so that has been included. We added a new police officer position in the 2024 budget. This position is included in the 25 budget. However, we haven't increased the levy for this because we're utilizing some one-time state funding that we received back in December of 2023 called Public Safety Aid. So some of those funds have been spent, but we have not spent the bulk majority of those funds. So we will use those funds to fund that police officer position again next year, along with transitioning one of our 3 sergeant positions to a deputy chief position in 2025 as well. So the difference between what that sergeant position costs and what the deputy chief position costs will be funded as well from that public safety aid. And the creation of that position is really just for trying to help with sort of pacing things out and making sure that the police chief is able to retire someday and able to pass down some knowledge to some of the other folks in the office there as well. Our debt levy, so the city had a really large debt issue that we paid off in 2024 this year, which we obviously wouldn't need to levy for next year. So that freed up some space for us to be able to do our final bite or our final increase in our levy that was needed for the new public works facility, and then also the second stab at our 2024 street rehab project debt. So if you recall, last year the council increased the levy $200,000 in order to start funding the large 2024 street rehab projects you've seen kind of sprinkled around town. This is helping to fund the remainder of where that levy needs to be in order to service that debt for the next 7 years. The overall debt levy only had a modest increase of $6,000 because we did have some of that debt falling off, not needing to be levied, and then we're layering back in that new debt. So kind of nice to be able to do that in one of these years where we had some old debt dropping off. Kind of the last major thing that I want to discuss is the library. So the library was awarded a Minnesota Department of Education grant recently for $749,999. The grant is to make some major improvements to the library building, including repairing and replacing the library's roof, doing some major exterior rehab of the historic features of the building, and then interior work to make the building more accessible and compliant with ADA requirements, including replacement of the elevator that currently is not ADA compliant as it's not large enough. It's more of a lift. So the city must fund a 50% match to those grant funds, so we need to come up with the other half of those project costs, so about $750,000. So our plan to do that is to utilize some funds that the city does already have on hand in our permanent improvement fund, and then just pay ourselves back over a series of years with a modest levy increase. So for the 25 budget and levy, we've got a $40,000 capital levy for the library. And then for the following year's budget in 26, we'll have another possible $35,000 levy increase. So that'll be $75,000 total, which we'll do for approximately 10 years until that those funds are paid back to that permanent improvement fund and can be utilized for other city projects. So those are kind of the main items. Again, that final budget and levy will be discussed at the regular city council meeting on December 10th, where that truth and taxation hearing will be held, and then we'll receive public comment on that final budget and levy at 6:01 p.m. Pursuant to Minnesota state statutes. And I guess with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? I don't hear any. Dan?
All right, item C is consideration to a resolution establishing the preliminary budget and tax levy collected in 2025 and designated December 10th, 2024 at 6:01 p.m. as the date for public comment on the budget and proposed levy. We met quite a few times throughout August. We met at the Finance Committee this afternoon, again, reviewed this. We've had a lot of discussion, and our Finance Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution establishing our preliminary budget and levy, and to also designate December 10th at 6:01 PM as the date for public comment on the budget and proposed levy. Is there discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. And I would just like to thank all the members of the council that participated in that budget process. It's kind of a long and arduous process, so thank you so much. Go ahead, Dan.
Item D is consideration to a resolution granting the city council consent for taxes payable or payable 2025 for the HRA levy. Heidi, you want to give us a rundown of that?
I'll make this one a little more brief. So the HRA, the Detroit Lakes HRA, has a housing, owner-occupied housing rehab program and down payment assistance program. They've had those for a few years now. In order for them to levy taxes, the city council has to sort of give their blessing in order for that to happen. And so since 2022, the council has allowed the HRA to do so. This isn't something that goes into the city's levy. This is a special taxing district under your tax statement. So it is not in with the city's tax line item on your property tax bill, but it is under special taxing districts on your property tax statement. So for the HRA to be able to levy these taxes and do this levy, the council does need to grant their consent.
So item D is consideration to resolution granting city council consent for taxes payable for 2025 HRA levy. The finance committee reviewed this afternoon, and it came out with a positive recommendation on a 3-1 decision to move this forward, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution granting city council consent for taxes payable in 2025 for the Housing and Redevelopment Authority levy. Discussion?
I would like to just comment a little bit about the Housing Authority. We have Nicole Brislin, she's our director. I happen to be president on the board. But I don't think people realize the number of people in town that need help, low-income people that have trouble with finding affordable housing. And right off the bat, I want to say their location is at Pleasant View Apartments, which is kind of across the street from Holy Rosary Schools, where their location for their office. But if you're having trouble making your rental payments in general, you should go down and talk to the folks in the office down there, because they have ways of lowering your rent so that you can afford to live at your house and have that extra rent money then to help with cost of living, like groceries and that sort of thing. And I'll give you an example. We had one lady that came in and she was having problems. She was approximately $900 a month rent and very low income. And by the time they got done helping her, it ended up that her rent became $350, and that included all of her electricity and water and all the utilities, heat and everything. So if you're struggling out there with housing needs for rentals and stuff, you should be going down and talking to the folks down at HRA. I also want to mention that, as Heidi said, we do have this program for housing repairs. If you've got a house that needs repair and you got leaking roofs and windows and so forth, you should go down and talk to them about that, because they have a program that'll help you get these repairs done. And they've got a program that'll work out. So you say, well, I don't have the money. Well, that's why you should be going down and talking to the folks down at HRA. And we also now have a small down payment assistance for people. If you're having trouble, say, how can I afford a down payment? You should go down and talk to them with that too. They have many tools down there to help you with. And it's worth their visit to go down and talk to them. And then lastly, the Development Authority and the Housing Authority, they both paid 50% to have a housing study done. And we haven't had one for over 5 years, but the report came back, it was 465 pages report about the housing needs for Detroit Lakes. And they're gonna give the results of that study on October 25th, start at 8 o'clock at the Holmes ballroom. So if you're interested in what the housing study is gonna say about our needs, you should come to that meeting. But I just wanna say that this money is very well used, and it's needed. You know, if we've got a lot of people that are low income and they need help, and this is what this program's about.
All right, we do have a motion, a second, right?
Correct.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, we're back to item E, is consideration to resolution amending the bylaws of the Detroit Lakes Fire Department Relief Association, provide for an additional $1,200 per year for a lump sum pension of $12,500 for each year effective April 1st, 2025. Heidi, you want to give us a rundown on this?
Sure. So, the Fire Relief Association had, one of their semi-annual meetings in late July. And there, we discuss and look at, their pension fund and how it is funded. Currently, with their current benefit level of $11,300 per year of service, if the city were, or if they were to end the year 2024 at this benefit level, their funding percentage in their pension fund would be at 124% funded, which is well over what they need. So in order to make it somewhat fair to anyone who's looking to retire somewhat soon, they're requesting that they increase the amount to $12,500 per year of service. And then at that point, with the current folks that we have and the vesting percentages that are required for them to, be eligible for that $12,500 per year, their funding estimates would be at about 111% funded. So still well over 100% funded. They're trying to target somewhere around that 110% funded mark, which gives them some cushion so that there's no liability on the city's side of having a potential required municipal contribution. And so I think that certainly helps us and makes sure that, should there be a poor investment return year or something of that nature, then the city is protected. So I do believe that this is something that is doable and is something that you can consider.
All right, so Finance Committee reviewed this, recommends approval of the $1,200 per year increase to $12,500 for each effective year, which I think in terms of what we do give to our fire department on a yearly basis for all the calls and all the service they do for the community, I think this is the best thing that we should do for them. It fits the needs of the requirements of the state statutes and allows for an incentive at the end of their career. Finance Committee reviewed this, recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution amending the bylaws of the fire department to provide an additional $1,200 per year in the lump sum pension. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else, Dan?
Nothing further for now.
All right, we'll go to the Public Safety Committee, Chairwoman Spry.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 8A, consideration to the first reading of ordinance 526, creating a city code 801.12 engine brakes. And I will let Kelsey kind of bring us up to speed. I'm sure you'll do a better job than I.
I'll take a swing at Mayor and Council. This actually came up at a Public Works meeting in the prior month. We had a couple of residents kind of in that East Shore neighborhood. Also, there's a neighborhood there that's right off of Highway 10. Raised a concern of basically engine braking, jake braking, whatever you want to call it. One of the things that they explained is it's gotten worse in recent years because of Highway 54 a stoplight was put in a few years ago, and now you have trucks basically coming to a stop at that intersection, which they didn't have to stop at before. So there was a kind of a request to MnDOT about putting up signage, and that kind of led us down this path of, well, in order to be able to put up any type of signage, we need to have an ordinance in place that prohibits it. So, city attorney drafted up this, ordinance that would go into our city code. It's basically prohibiting engine braking, within the city limits.
Okay,
Thank you. Our committee, discussed this at length yesterday, and we are of, the opinion we want to move forward, and so we would need a second reading.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to give first reading to ordinance 526, creating a city code regarding engine braking. Discussion?
Do we know what, I think we said yesterday in subcommittee that MnDOT would put up the signs, but we would have to pay for them? Do we know the cost of those signs?
Yes, Mayor and Council, we would pay MnDOT to install them signs. We do not have a cost.
Okay.
Further discussion?
I want to say too that this ordinance isn't just for Jake braking, it's for any kind of a noise ordinance. It's what the sign's gonna say, so you could have loud mufflers or many loud motorcycles or whatever it may be. It's, music, it's a noise ordinance, so it's not just a Jake brake ordinance.
Okay, further discussion?
Not true. This particular ordinance is around engine brakes in particular. I think what you might be referencing is the signs may say sound ordinance or noise ordinance, but this particular
Yeah.
ordinance is specific to engine brakes. It
Okay,
doesn't go into
all
those
right.
other things.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. First reading is given to ordinance 526. Anything else, Wendy?
Nothing.
Liquor and Gambling Control Committee, Chairman Dahlman.
All right, we just had an update on cannabis regulations. We're trying to nail this thing down as far as where we're gonna put these retail stores and cultivating. So we're getting closer. There's other variables that are still out there on this regulations. So Kelsey, anything you wanna?
That's a good summary.
Okay, perfect. All right. And then we have 9I, which is basically a gambling permit for the Detroit Lakes Rotary, which is September 21st, 2024 at La Barista. The committee reviewed it and we unanimously approved, so I still move.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a gambling permit for the Noon Rotary Club for September 21st.
I don't know if it's noon or not, but,
Okay, Detroit Lakes Rotary.
but it is at September 21st.
Noon Rotary.
Noon, okay.
Is that for the Oktoberfest? Yes. So it is, okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Anything else, Aaron?
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Okey-doke. There is one item on the Public Utilities Commission agenda, and I would call on Alderman Stearns.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Public Utilities Commission met this morning, and one of the items on the agenda was a review of two bids that were submitted for the furnishing of some 115 kV breakers that are going to be installed in the industrial substation in 2026. And so the bids were reviewed, and the lead time on those, General Manager Roberts is hoping that we would receive these by July of 2026. So there is a long lead time. So, yeah, exactly. The one bid that was recommended for approval was, both were submitted by Border States. The one that was recommended is for a bid price of $231,200. So I have item 10A, consideration to accepting bids for the 115 kV breakers and awarding the contract to Border States for $231,200, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept a bid from Border States Electric for some new 115 kV breakers. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We've got a couple other items regarding the Becker County Detroit Lakes Airport. Dan, do you have those?
Yep, I'll take them.
Okay.
Item 11A is consideration to a resolution authorizing the execution of a grant agreement with MinDOT for the airport taxi lane rehabilitation, or rehabilitation project. Kelsey, you want to give us a little bit of background on this?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, basically the taxi lane pavement rehabilitation project is basically some mill and overlay and seal coating project at the airport. The grant agreement covers, there's a federal portion, a state portion, and then the balance is paid by the airport. Percentages, they vary a little bit based upon what is eligible, based upon where the work is being done. So the federal share is about 33%, state share is 46%, and then the local share is about 21%. This is going to be paid for out of the airport fund, so there's no additional request for funding from the city or the county.
So the Finance Committee reviewed this afternoon, recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution authorizing the execution of a grant agreement with MinDOT for the airport taxi lane rehab project. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item 11B is the third month now that we're taking a look at this issue. It's about the funding of the T-hangars at the airport. First month was approving the loan agreement, second month was rescinding that, and this month is the finalization of how we are going to finance that without loaning or getting a loan from the bank.
Mayor and Council, that's correct. So originally, the two new 6-unit T-hangars were going to be financed through basically private financing through a bank. The interest rates were higher than expected, so we decided to go back and look at funding it internally, both with the city and the county. The total project cost is $1.3 million, so the capital contribution that's in the resolution is for half that amount, for $650,000. That is intended to be split between public utilities using their economic development grant and loan fund to fund $400,000 of that, and then the Detroit Lakes Development Authority funding the balance of $250,000 at a term of 10 years at 5.5% interest. This is similar to the LifeLink hangar that was constructed a couple of years ago. Those were internally financed between the city and county to the tune about, I think it's about $326,000 each is what that one was. So a little bit more, a little bit of a higher interest rate, but it just seems like a prudent thing to do to use those existing funds rather than borrowing money at over 7%.
So with this, the money is going to be coming from the rental of the T-hanger, so it's not coming out of the city budget. This still needs to go to the county for approval, plus the airport authority for approval and the development authority for approval. So this is just one step in the continued hurdle process. So item 11B is consideration to a resolution authorizing capital contribution to the Detroit Lakes Becker County Airport Commission. Finance Committee reviewed this afternoon, recommends approval, and I so move.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution authorizing capital contribution to the Detroit Lakes Becker County Airport Commission. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I have some appointments I'd like to recommend to the council this evening. I'd like to recommend the reappointment of Andy McCombs to the Becker County Food Pantry for another term.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Andy McCombs to the Becker County Food Pantry. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I would like to recommend the reappointment of Chris Jaskin to the Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board, and I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Chris Jaskin to the HRA Board. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I would like to recommend the reappointment of Matt Bokie to the Development Authority, and I would entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Matt Bokie to the Development Authority. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I would like to recommend the reappointment of Ron Zeman to the Development Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Ron Zeman to the Development Authority. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I would like to make the recommendation to reappoint Matt Davis to the Library Board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Matt Davis to the library board. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I do have a couple more appointments that I do not have a recommendation tonight. Specifically, we have a couple openings on the Development Authority, and I'm looking for some folks there. I've asked a couple people and have struck out so far, so if anybody in the council has a candidate, you can certainly let me know. Kelsey, anything else further from city staff?
Mayor and council, the only thing I was going to mention, as the pavilion referendum comes close to a vote in November, we are looking at having a open house on September 25th from 4 to 7. There's no set time for any type of presentation. It'll just be kind of an open house style for residents of the community to come in. Maybe they haven't been in the building for a while to see what its current state is, to ask questions, to learn more about the referendum. So we're still working on getting a flyer and stuff put together and getting that out, but the plan is September 25th from 4 to 7.
Okay, thank you. Couple announcements, as Ron indicated earlier, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Fall Conference is coming up on November 21st and 22nd in Alexandria, and if you're interested in attending, please let Carrie know. The balance of the joint governments meeting dates are listed. The balance of the Detroit Lake City Council meeting dates are listed. And the 2025 City Council meeting dates are also listed in the packet. So with that, anything further, Jay?
No.
Sean?
No.
Mike?
No.
Matt?
What date was the housing study again?
25th of October. at 8
25th of
o'clock.
October, yep.
Friday morning.
Friday morning.
Nothing else, Your Honor.
All right, Jackie?
No, thanks.
Ron?
None, Your Honor.
Wendy? Dan?
Nope.
Aaron?
I have nothing.
Okay.
I have something,
Carrie has
Mr. Mayor.
something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would like to take this time to say happy birthday to Councilmember Josephson. It's his birthday today.
Happy birthday.
He had to wish me a happy
Born
birthday
for drinks.
last
month, so it's his turn this month.
Wherever you're buying.
But now I need to rescind my no comment because I need to also say happy birthday to the Assistant City Attorney Dylan Ramstead Scoils.
Oh, happy birthday.
Close.
All right, well, with that, the business of this council has come to a conclusion and the meeting's adjourned.